world of two who would be watching at this moment. I'm checking my phone as we go. It looks like we're live. There's a little bit of a delay. And so we got a Shark Stewards page. So hi everyone, if you're watching our Facebook Live, Art for Sharks, happy July. Happy International Shark Awareness Week. Month. We're making it the whole month at Shark Stewards. We're going to be doing a series of events live like these, in-person events this year, which I'm very excited to share. But our first one is with artist Stephanie Miller. God. Martin. God. See, that's what it always does it when you do live. Stephanie Martin, I apologize. It's Stephanie Zeller Martin from Santa Cruz. And she's a fine artist, a very fine artist, and ocean lover and ocean swimmer. We started doing Art for Sharks live, actually at a real event in Sharktober, which is the summer or fall months when the great white sharks return to our National Marine Sanctuary and the west coast of California, where we live. And COVID came after our gallery and art shows, and so we decided to do an Art for Sharks on Instagram, and artists who participate help share the word, share their work, and sometimes share some of their sales. And so if you would please go to Stephanie Martin's webpage, I'll give you the URL right now because it's open. It's stephaniemartinart.com. And on Instagram, it's Stephanie Martin Art, and probably Facebook, Stephanie Martin Art. I don't know. Stephanie, tell us.
Yeah.
Great.
Same.
So we're Shark Stewards. Hi, I'm broadcasting from Kona. Because of COVID, we can no longer work in Southeast Asia yet, but we still do have a chapter in Singapore, a group in Indonesia, and Malaysia working on shark conservation, protecting coral reef habitat, bringing students to study, learn, and engage with the community to restore their habitat, sometimes to protect it and to increase protection for living sharks, but also to stop the shark fin trade when the flow throughout the world, including the United States, hopefully to stop soon, to Southeast Asia and to China. So we do advocacy, research, but also education. And this is part of the education. And we also have a lot of fun. So we hope you join us, add your questions, comments, your likes, share Stephanie's website, and check out her website, stephaniemartin.com. Look at her amazing work. We're gonna share some of her work a little bit later, but we're also gonna talk about some of the practices, the methods of the art that she does in her printmaking primarily. So Stephanie, welcome. Thanks for joining us live. Stephanie's in Santa Cruz, and let's talk about your art and what inspired you.
Well, I studied natural history in college and always loved to be outside, whether it was ocean or the high Sierra. I need both in my lives. I live in Santa Cruz, but I also need my regular high Sierra trips. And I didn't pursue art when I was young. I was interested in it, but I was practical about making a living. I was a teacher and I took my students on many, many hikes and field trips. And then finally the time came when my own kids, my daughters were in high school and I had summers off, and it's like, I'm gonna finally do some art. And then I circled back to my old interests in birds, plants, ocean, California, natural history. And so it's just a real pleasure and honor, and I'm thrilled that I get to do it. I never thought I would be doing this.
Well, your work is beautiful. You have quite the oeuvre. I was looking at all the shows and galleries, and you were actually referred or found, I don't know, by one of my friends and board members, Bill Brick. And I don't know if you know Bill through the Beach Watch program, or I'm not sure what your connection is, but he's the one who recommended you join the Art for Sharks team and program. And Bill has a couple of your pieces of work on his wall. And so I've had a chance to.
He's an enthusiastic supporter. I'm grateful. Yeah.
He's very enthusiastic and supportive of Shark Stewards as well. So I looked at your work, and I grew up in Southern California, but moved my way north, and actually did some graduate work in Monterey, and went to UC Santa Cruz and lived in the hills for a while with all the hippies and Surf Steamers Lane. And eventually went up to Berkeley, where I finished my graduate work and worked there. But so I'm now, it's really Central California, but we call it Northern California. And so a lot of the wildlife that you feature in your work, the cormorants and the pelicans and some of the nature scenes, are not only from the Sierra, but also along our California shoreline. And we get to see a lot of those through our Farallon Island research trips and also public education. So the most amazing rookeries, actually in all of North America. We have the largest seabird rookery outside of Alaska, and then further west of Hawaii, and literally just hundreds of thousands of birds on rocks, pooping and squawking and laying eggs and nesting. So it really is an amazing place because of the upwelling that we have off of our coastline. And that goes all the way to the marine predators like sharks.
Yeah, I really love to portray the birds that aren't classically cute or pretty, you know, a seabird like a cormorant or an auklet, you know, they're just kind of like birders' birds. They're obscure, they're off in the water, and to me they're just amazing and striking, and they survive such a crazy and tough environment. And I love portraying seabirds. Really, really fun.
Well, on that note, if you don't mind, I will share some of your work. We'll go to your website first. And that's Instagram. I have to move around. There we go. Can you see that? There you are. And there's a cormorant, kingfisher. So these are some of your etchings, and I'd love to discuss and learn from you about the process of intaglio, or etching, which is really it's sort of like a mystery. It's a revelatory process. It's not like putting paint on the paper. You can tell us what it is, but then eventually the image comes out that hopefully you want it, or sometimes maybe not. But it is an incredibly exacting and detailed process, and very ancient.
So they certainly don't all cross the finish line. I can spend 90 hours on a plate, and I was like, that just never worked out. But when they do, it's a sweet feeling. Yeah, so I can explain the process briefly if you like.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love that. I'm going to stop sharing in 1 second, but let's just look at a couple of these plates. Yeah. And this is a black crowned night heron, right?
Yep, got it.
And
a lot of the seabirds
detail here in the back. Not only, I mean, it looks so lifelike, but and wow, the size is 7 by 7, so not really large. But also, I imagine you have a fairly expensive medium you work in as well, copper plates. This is one of my favorites. So I'll go to you, and you can actually do a little bit of a show and tell, but we'll share a couple of your images. And I love this. I mean, the level of detail is just extraordinary. And of course, these are these magnificent birds that live along the Northeast Pacific, very large wingspan, and almost went extinct in the 70s because of DDT and also the big oil spill off Santa Barbara. And I remember that oil spill when I was a little kid. Sorry?
Can I mention something about the pelican?
Yeah.
I titled that piece Year of the Pelican because it was that year, maybe 6 years ago, when we had that amazing spectacle of humpback whales and the feeding frenzies that were the best I've ever seen in Monterey Bay. And, you know, people, such as I, would spend hours on the side of the cliff and just watching the pelicans, the elegant terns, everyone diving for the anchovies, and the fish just flopping onto the sand. And it was just amazing. And so when I made the etching inspired by that, I called it Year of the Pelican, thinking we had an abundant year. And then I find out, this is, things you don't think about, that in actuality, it had been a rotten year for nesting success down in Anacapa and where the pelicans breed. And the number of anchovies was actually very low, but they were concentrated by the shore. So we were seeing this concentration of food, and it looked like abundance, but really the rest of the bay was struggling. So it was a lesson, like what we see as local abundance might not be the whole picture. So that was kind of sobering to find out from talking to scientists what was really going on.
Well, it's great that you have that history, that experience and education background as a natural historian to add that level of detail and the story itself, rather than just kind of a static, beautiful piece. What was interesting is those warm water years, we saw an influx of brown pelicans into the San Francisco Bay. And suddenly, where there are only a few, there are hundreds. And I think it was because of that shift, because of the warm water sea temperatures. And we still had a little bit of upwelling in anchovies. And then they became resident. So we see these big V's of brown pelicans where rarely would you see a large group of pelicans, at least in my history of swimming in the bay for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. So that's a great backstory. Thank you. And if you're just joining us, hi, I'm David McGuire, Shark Stewards. We fight for sharks and protect the place they live, but not just sharks, all of the marine wildlife and ecosystems that we love and are increasingly imperiled. We have Stephanie Martin with us, who is an artist and natural historian. And now Pamela Comstock joined us, our board member and developer of Art for Sharks.
Hi.
The founder. Hi, Pamela.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi,
Calling
Pamela.
in from Oahu, I think.
Yeah, I've had crazy Wi-Fi problems, guys. I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, we're glad you're there too. We all experience it. And not at all. I kind of did a little bit of brief intro about Art for Sharks, but historically, I find that people tune into these things a little bit later. And if you want to just give a backstory or background, and then we're going to learn how Stephanie did these incredible works that we're seeing on the screen right now.
Yes, it's beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining. Let me share a little bit about Art for Sharks for those of you listening and for those of you who don't know what Art for Sharks is. Art for Sharks is for the art admirer side of protecting sharks. It was a program that we put together for shark stewards whose mission is to restore ocean health by saving sharks. We decided to put together a platform of art when promoting saving sharks, and we created Art for Sharks through Instagram, and we did it during Sharktober of last October and introduced some select artists that we chose that we felt had a love for the ocean, and Stephanie was one of them. If you just look at our Instagram, Art for Sharks, you will see a handful of very passionate artists, some who paint sharks, some who paint pelicans like Stephanie and other birds, or some who just paint oceans. But we usually find artists that are just passionate about the sea. So Stephanie joins us with this incredible talent. I love that are you from Santa Cruz, Stephanie?
Well, I've been here for, almost 40 years. So I would say yes. Okay. Not originally, chosen home.
Yes. So naturally you're just an ocean girl. And your art reflects that. And Art for Sharks is all about promoting artists like Stephanie, and any art that we put on our Instagram or our website, a percentage of it goes to shark stewards that help save sharks. Thank you for joining us today. So you guys were introduced to her already. before I was able to get on. So Stephanie, have you started a little bit, or was David giving a bit of an intro?
David's been showing a couple of the images.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to just go ahead and introduce you and have you go ahead and start talking about your artwork. I know we didn't prep, but we're very candid. And I think that you look beautiful and you can talk about your art and be as candid as you need to be.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the honor of having me participate in this program. It's, you know, I've just required the ocean every day, either biking alongside it or swimming in it, or I have to be at the ocean part of every day. It's a requirement. A 12-year-old friend of ours thought I was just abnormal for that. That's weird. She craves the ocean. That's weird. But I happily embrace that. In fact, after this is over, well, actually I did already go once this morning, but that wasn't enough. Yeah, this morning I got to go explore a really interesting part of the coast I'd never been to. It's private property, but I'm helping do some bird surveys. And so I got permission
about that
go
offline. And I actually have to visit the ocean every day. I'm exactly the same way. It something feels like it's missing if I don't see the ocean every day. So
yeah, so the work I do primarily is etchings, which is this very complicated ancient technique, dates back to the Renaissance, where you take a copper plate and you do all this work to it to have it become textured. And then you can rub ink into it, the texture that you've created, put wet paper on it, a wool blanket, and squeeze it through intense pressure of a press, and you get one print out of it. And it all starts with drawings. So a lot of my birds, the seabirds that I've done are specimens at the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History or Santa Cruz's museum. So a lot of them are dead birds in museums. And the plants, of course, are easier to draw. And I've also done some landscapes of coastal settings. But, you know, I'm going out and I'm taking a sketch pad. I finally got to go my first trip to Baja just before COVID. And here's just some of the shells I sketched. Here's a little sketch in the interior of Santa Cruz Island. I got to go there with some artists. And here's just a watercolor sketch. And I do tons of sketches, and then the etching process is so laborious and iffy whether it succeeds, that I'll do tons of sketches and decide, okay, what do I really like, what image, what composition that I'm willing to devote, you know, hours and hours and hours to, and hope that it comes out as an etching.
could you explain the process of etching?
Yes, I was just going to. So
yes, I'm curious. I just want to know. I'm not sure if you had that in your plan to share.
Oh, I always does, because it's just one of those strange things. So the first step is, you know, I have my drawing figured out, and then I get a piece of copper. This is just a very small piece. And here's the back side of the copper. You can see it's pretty shiny. And this side is a little amber colored. I've heated the plate and rolled on a waxy coating. And this waxy coating protects the copper from acid. And then I take a needle tool, and if I start drawing some lines in here, it's removing that waxy coating, and I can see little lines, it's kind of hard to see, where the copper is now exposed. So anything I want to be a line in my piece, I'm drawing and I'm, you know, working on it. And then I take the copper and it goes into acid. Actually, copper goes into ferric chloride, which is a salt. And you can decide how thick and dark you want your lines by leaving them in the tank for longer. So it's eating away, making grooves in the copper plate. Then you take it out of the acid, you remove that coating, you rub ink into the cracks, wipe it off the surface. And then you put wet paper on this plate, a wool blanket, and you crank it through under intense pressure. And then you print it and you see, what do the lines look like? Are they okay? Do I have to work more on them? Here's the first test proof of a prairie falcon. And here's the Sellers J. And then you see I have all these little lab notes underneath it. So I might have to go back and do more work on the lines. Maybe if I made them too dark, I have to burnish them, put oil on it, and just rub it. And that's just elbow grease, lots of time. And that's the first part. And then as you see my etchings, these two, you know, they're not just lines, they're filled in with color. And that's the hard part. And that's called Aqua Tint. So that's a step where you take your plate, and I have this bag of very fine golden powder. It's ground up rosin, which was heated pine sap. And you put it in this chamber and you agitate it so the rosin is in the air, and you put your plate in there and the rosin settles down for a certain amount of time, and then you melt it on with a torch. So now you have a piece of copper with lines that are etched inside of it, and it's covered with little dots, pixels that resist acid. So then you take your plate, here's one I dished a long time ago, and this plate is covered with that. It has a little texture, and it's got this brown gunk painted around it. That's everything I want white. Then I'll put it in the acid for 30 seconds, and anything I want, just a very light color, then I'll paint. You keep making a mess and painting over this piece of copper, and at the very end, you know, the darkest part will have been in the acid maybe 20 minutes. So that's the step that takes you from the ink just being in lines to this is the same copper plate, and now it's got all this texture. And so this here was probably 20 minutes in the acid. This was 10 minutes, you know, this was 5 to 8 minutes. And you're doing all this kind of blind, because when you had that powder melting on the plate, you might have put too little or too much, and you could overfuse or underfuse it. So you can spend hours and hours, and then you remove all that gunk, you ink it up, and then you just pray that something turns out. And if you need to troubleshoot it, you can do it over and over. You can, there's steel wool, there's sandpaper, you know, there's a lot of elbow grease to fix things. And when it works out, then it's just really satisfying. And once you have your plate with texture, you decide what color ink you want to rub into it. So, you know, this abalone is one of my few pieces that's actually 3 different plates, one for each color. But most of the time I rub the ink into one section, the red and then the green, and print it just once, and you get one piece. So that pelican, oh, that brown pelican's a bear to print.
Wow.
You putting different colors in it, and then I roll this aqua background over it, and then I wipe with a rag where I don't want the aqua on the face, and then yeah, so that one, right. Many mistakes. The ones that don't come out, here's the abalone where oops, upside down one of the plates and the colors were off. You know, there's many failures. So it's, you know, it's just a crazy process, but it's so satisfying. There's effects you can achieve that you couldn't do with pen and ink or watercolor or oil painting. You know, there's something special about it. And I also love that you get multiples. This last year, I haven't been able to do etchings because of COVID. The university up in Santa Cruz I rely on for some of the equipment has been shuttered. So I've been doing lots of watching of peregrine falcons on the coast and other lots of bird monitoring, volunteering. And so I'm working on some watercolors. Here's one of my falcons. And I like it, but then there's only one. Do I keep it? Do I sell it? No, I really love this one. But then I made, you know, I may have many dozens of them. But in etching, there's something beautiful like, oh, I can have one. I can give it to a friend. I can also sell them because I need to make a living at this.
So for one etching, a copper etching plate, you can continually make multiple prints from it? Or
well,
is it like
it does wear out.
Originals?
It does wear out.
Okay.
The process of wiping the ink off the surface and the intense pressure of the plate After a while, it does wear out. And you're also telling people, you know, they're buying a limited edition. And so, and it's also, oh gosh, I can't print another one of these. It takes 2 hours to get a good print of the pelican. You know, I can't see the pelican anymore. So, you know, they're numbered in the corner of an original print. You see it's number 2 out of 20 or 30. And then that's usually it, unless I decide to re-etch it and change something. The pelican was so popular, so many people wanted it, I sold out. Then when I was ready to print the pelican that fall that I did, it was just before they got the brown nape of their breeding plumage. And so when the pelican plate sold out, I spent a lot of hours I had to re-etch the whole thing to kind of perk it up. And then I added the brown nape, which is more the full breeding plumage.
Wow.
And I printed a full edition. So people wanted it, and I love that piece. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get it right.
That's my favorite too.
Yeah, mine too.
That was the one I posted on Instagram. So yeah, that was a great description. So I think Leonardo da Vinci actually used this technique, and it was kind of an early, almost artistic printing press because you could do repeats.
Yeah, I've heard that partly some of the techniques originated from decorating of armor, you know, incising into metal. That's something that I hear. But yeah, so a lot of early printmakers, you know, Rembrandt, his work is just beautiful line work. But the technique of Aqua Tint, where you melt that stuff on and you're filling in between lines to all this texture, that came much later, and I forget what year that was. But yeah, so, but it's definitely old school, slow art movement.
and it's alchemy. I mean, the Aqua Tint is like a glaze, right? It doesn't have a color until you heat it. Is that?
Well, the Aqua Tint is just little dots that resist acid. And then once you've etched around it to make these texture, then you remove that melted on tree rosin, and you have your plate with its texture in it. And so, and you know, you keep doing all these test prints. Here was just a metal piece of copper. I mean, a piece of copper that I fused that rosin on. I put it in for 20 seconds, the whole thing. And then at 20 seconds, I took it out and I painted masking fluid over this line. And I put it in for longer, and I'm just testing. And this was in 7 minutes, 20 seconds, and this was in 17 minutes. I'm testing the strength of the acid, if I'm putting the right amount of rosin on, and if I heated it up correctly when I fused it to the plate. And so there's, you know, I have my little notebook of all my things. Hopefully I can troubleshoot when things go wrong. It's like, oh, okay, is the acid really weak today? You know, what's going on? Yeah, it keeps changing.
Have you actually taught people how to do etchings? Have you given or any sort of special classes to anybody personally, or is that something you offer, or is this something you just do as an artist and you sell your prints?
Yeah, well, I have a great situation. There's the etching of that abalone plates. I took I took basic drawing at our local community college, Cabrillo, about 15 years ago. And then etching intaglio happened to be offered in the evening after my day job teaching. So I just kind of landed in it. And then I was interested in continuing it, but they didn't have any more classes. And then I was so fortunate, I got to audit a class at UCSC, advanced intaglio, and it was taught at night. And it's closer to where I live.
Wow.
And ever since then, I've been what's called a monitor. So they have community volunteers like me, or recent graduates or current students that have had some experience. Yeah, look at that, mixing up the ink. And in exchange for using the studios, we help out. So we volunteer so many hours a week, And so when I'm there, I'm essentially a TA for the kids who are learning this technique, and I enjoy it. And these kids are so hardworking and so talented. So I get to hang around with 20-year-olds doing art. I love it. And I so missed it this last year. They had to do art, virtually without all these, materials and equipment. And it's just a fabulous, fortunate situation I get to be in. So I'm informally teaching them while there's a real professor teaching the class. Then on the many hours they have to put in, I'm there to help.
Right. So when are they doing it again? When are they going to open that up again for you to get back in the studios? Do you know?
September. Yes, September. Yay.
Okay. Yay. Okay, good. I may have to come see you do it, or just watch a class.
Mm-hmm.
Do they allow that?
I'm sure with arrangement that would be allowed. Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
So this is a really great series. I guess it's a story of Stephanie's on Instagram, Stephanie Martin Art. And it kind of shows just what she was talking about. See, what I thought really fascinating, just watching it after hearing you talk about it. And if you want to just kind of comment, because this is such a great step by step.
Yeah, well, in this piece, I knew I had to have separate plates for the colors. And you see, back in the beginning, you saw the plate with all that brown stuff on it. That was just where I wanted to protect it from the acid. And yeah. And then I tried, stay on there for a second. And in the center, you see more drippy stuff. That's the acid painted directly on to give it a more watercolory look. And then you remove all that stuff from the plate and go to the next one. Yeah, so now the plates have been cleaned off. All that Aqua Tint rosin is removed and the masking, and I'm mixing inks. And I wanted a very transparent look. So you start with all your primary colors and this transparency that we can add to the ink. And I'm mixing and trying to get the right colors. And here's a test print where I just printed the second layer. Oh, it must be out of order because that's the first layer. Yeah, out of order. My fault. And then,
oh, wow.
There's the third layer. And you can see how the paper's embossed around the edges. That's how you know it's an etching and not something like a screen print or lithography. Okay. It's wet paper and it needs such extreme pressure because you're getting the paper fibers down into that texture you created to pull the ink up.
I like when I see that effect on paper.
Yeah.
It's part of the artwork. When I see that press, that print, I know that there was work on that paper.
Yeah, and you can't print these without a press. So with wood blocks and linoleum blocks, I've done those as well. You can hand rub on the back and work without a press. But this, because in those situations, the ink is on the surface. But in this art, you have to have extreme pressure.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. I thank you for sharing this process, but you reminded me of when I first started doing art myself when I was a really young kid. When you first take a class in an art class or your teacher, what's your earliest childhood memory of doing your own artwork?
I was always very crafty, and I would do some sketching, but
so you always drew. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not as much as I should have. I mean, if I had any advice to people now, it's like draw all the time. I was self-critical and it's like, oh, I'm not good enough to study art. So I did not study art, even though I loved it and was interested. I thought you had to be really good. And, but one situation that forced me to do more drawing is when I studied natural history and we had field classes and we had to do a lot of botanical sketches. We're sitting there in the Siskiyou County sketching the California native carnivorous plants. I was like, this is amazing. So And what's so amazing is I've studied natural history and it's been a lifelong interest, but when you sit down and you sketch a plant and look at it for hours, there's so much more that you notice. Such a deeper understanding than, oh, I see the plant, oh, I keyed it out. Maybe you spend a few minutes looking at my flora and keyed it out. But when you draw it and you draw it long enough, I sat there and this was over in Big Sur, some of the beautiful leopard lilies along our coastal streams. And you're there long enough, you see the stamens dehiss, that's these terms for, the anthers dehiss on the stamens. You see the petals start recurving, you see change happening, and it's just mind blowing. And that is my favorite. I love the part in the studio. I love the craftsmanship of making the copper plate, but the magic of being outside and sketching that abalone shell on the beach in Big Sur. I wasn't going to remove a shell from the beach, and it was a hot day in the cove down in Big Sur, and I painted it, in situ, or looking that closely at a plant. That is, to me, just, that's my religion. It's a very, very special time.
That's really good advice about just telling young people to, or not even young people, just to sketch. Just draw as much as you can, because it's really true. The more you draw, the better you get at it. And the more you draw, the more you observe. And like you said, there's details in plants. I'm looking at plants here in Hawaii that I never noticed before. And I'm learning different types of tropical plants. And I can't even tell you how overwhelmed I am. I'm like, what's that called again? I'm really, because I'm new here. So it's like you said, like you look at it and then you all of a sudden see details you've never seen. And only from observing nature that you really, really realize how beautiful and intricate those details are in real life. My son is one of the artists for Art for Sharks, and he sketches a lot, and he pays attention to the details too. And he tries to draw everything as much as possible before he paints it. But he likes to be out in nature like you. He likes to be out in the field, and he creates his best works from just being outside and painting what he sees than from a photograph, so he does do that too, but it's a little bit more, the details are so different when he does it from when he's capturing it live, like when he's really out there.
Yeah, there's a magic.
He remembers it. The memory of the whole act of doing that is with him. So.
Well, that's kind of an interesting, going back to natural history, because a lot of the early explorers, like with Captain James Cook, were both here in Hawaii, who was a European explorer. The Hawaiians were here. But Forrester went along with them, who did a lot of amazing drawings and ink. And a lot of the natural historians, Darwin, Cuvier, Linnaeus, all were sketchers, were drawers as well. And one of the things that we teach students, and Stephanie and I were talking earlier about COVID and trying to get kids outdoors and to interact, and how hard it is to teach. And a lot of our work with shark stewards and my work teaching is to bring kids into nature and into the field. And the first thing we do is give them a field notebook and say, part of your grade is based on your observations in the field, and that includes drawings. And some are terrible, and some are really amazing, but they have a good time. But it also does kind of, in a way, imprint the details upon your memory. So if you're going to go back and either make some kind of scientific observation or poetry or art or whatever, you've actually experienced it, you've studied it a little bit more. And instead of just like, oh, that's beautiful, or taking a picture and putting it on Instagram, you're taking the time and the meditation of the experience. And then Stephanie does a lot more, probably hundreds of hours with those plates and inks.
Yeah.
So I wanted
that process of just slowing down and observing is especially important in today's world.
And getting outdoors. And then, for us, we're an activist group doing something about it and working to protect it. So if you are tuning in, this is our 5th artist with Art for Sharks. We've had some really fun conversations with my board member and friend Pamela Comstock and Stephanie Martin, featured artist today on Art for Sharks. This will be on YouTube, Shark Stewards YouTube. We'll get some of my gaffes and the technical glitches out, and it'll be perfect, and you can watch it and share it with your kids. And so we're talking about how, I guess, nature inspires art, but also in many cases inspires others to appreciate art. And we've been spending a lot of detail on the intaglio process, but you're also a painter. So hopefully you're seeing your website here, StephanieMartinFineArt.com. Can you see the website?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't been painting as much lately, sadly, but and what I used to do is when the weather was good, I'd be outside painting on location, and then evenings and rainy days were for printmaking. But now more and more I've been doing printmaking, but I always have at least watercolor with me. Yeah, this is Scott Creek up the coast. Yeah, family was living in Santa Cruz and they moved back to England and they bought this and took it with them when they moved. It's fun to know.
And these are pastels.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Those are so beautiful. They're really just beautiful. I love them.
And appropriate name. Shark Rock.
Yeah.
Yep. Also called Shark Fin up near Davenport.
Yeah. Did that sell?
Yes, sadly. I know. See, that's the heartbreak with paintings is there's only one.
But that's
where's the etchings? Yeah, the etchings, you have multiples, so.
And you also do work in the Sierra Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
Tioga Lake. And so where can one purchase your work, Stephanie?
Well, my etchings, I have at a number of galleries. Yosemite at Ansel Adams Gallery has they have my Sierra and Bird etchings. Mono Lake Committee in Mono Lake has mostly birds. And Pescadero, there's a beautiful gallery that has my work, and Carmel. And people are also welcome to come over to my house. And our biggest event is Open Studios in October, where people come over and I demonstrate the process or explain. I don't have all the equipment here. And that's a really fun event. A lot of communities have those couple of weekends where people roam from one studio to the next. And that's in October after, of course, a hiatus last year. And yeah, I'll be showing downtown in Santa Cruz in November. Yeah, things are just starting to pick up after all the closures of COVID. And then I have my online shop on Etsy. Yeah. So that's fun because I've shipped, my rhinoceros auklet etching went to two of the seabirds, like auklet and probably a puffin, went to a man in Japan who on his free time goes out and ships to admire the seabirds. And it's the same ocean, it's just the other side. And the same birds. So that was just really, really warm to know that I was sending artwork to someone admiring the same seabirds thousands of miles away. And some marine biologists, I get tickled when a scientist wants to buy one of the birds they've studied, and I've done a good enough job that it's depicted the bird honestly and accurately, but also hopefully has some interpretation and character to it.
There's the rhinoceros auklet and tufted puffin, two of my favorite birds out at the Gulf of Farallones.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the Farallones. I know people who go out there, but I've been able to go to Año Nuevo Island, and I know some of the biologists who are doing amazing restoration work there particularly for the auklets. So it's really fun to talk to these biologists and get more natural history information about the birds I'm portraying.
Well, we have trips that we take the public out to the Farallon Islands during Sharktober. First one's during Labor Day, so maybe we can have you join us.
Yeah, I hear about the rough seas on that trip.
It can be. Sometimes it's glorious, but it's the ocean. It's a little bit more inclement out there than it is off Southern California or here on the lee side of the big island of Hawaii. But sometimes it's amazing. And the best weather, of course, in California is always in September, October. And that's when the great white sharks come back from near where I am to the Farallons to feed on those nice big fat elephant seals who are also back from their migration, giving birth and feeding in the Gulf.
Yeah.
So, and of course, it's really, I say our trips are for the birds because of those amazing abundance of seabirds and nesting and feeding in the sanctuary. But also we get land birds out there as well. It's really an extraordinary place and unusual. You'll see some weird animals that end up blown by offshore winds and they have no business out there. And sometimes these little sparrows or wrens are able to make it the 30 miles back east to where they belong. Well, so this is your Etsy store. You have a great diversity of your etchings that we've been talking about with Stephanie Martin on Art for Sharks. And I think we were talking earlier about one of the other artists we had on last was Kevin Mirsky, who's really, prolific. And so are you. You are a really prolific artist. I'm impressed by how much work you have. And Kevin is like, on his Instagram is just whipping out all these really whimsical images of kind of obscure characters. You can't tell what they're thinking. They're riding surfboards or a bird on a shark fin. So these are really fun conversations, and we're going to have another one in about a month. We try to do these monthly to feature artists who are passionate about the ocean and protecting it with Shark Stewards. There were a couple questions or comments because we work with kids and really encourage kids to get involved with nature and to inspire them to help preserve it. And so I started out with like, what's your favorite animal? Because we had, if you saw on the Instagram Art for Sharks, there's a lot of kids some kids who have submitted, including one here from Hawaii, who's very passionate and sends us some of his drawings. And I randomly get a lot of kid art and they're so inspired by sharks. But I asked our audience who are watching now, including one of our beach clean up team members, lead really in Aquatic Park in San Francisco, Nancy, who I asked, what's your favorite animals? And people were mostly saying, well, sharks, of course, because we're shark stewards, like duh. But other people said humpback whales, but somebody said octopus. And as a filmmaker and also involved with the International Ocean Film Festival, we had some great films about octopuses, including this great film, My Octopus Teacher. So I want to put the question to you. What's your favorite animal either to appreciate or to draw? And I know it's a really hard question.
Well, I've been on a real peregrine falcon craze because I found a nest last year and I volunteered to monitor it for the group that, predatory bird research group. And so what an amazing experience. And I spent so many hours watching them, and I've done many, many watercolor paintings of them. So that they're pretty charismatic and amazing birds, and what a comeback story too.
Yeah, and rapacious.
Yeah.
How about you, Pamela? What's your favorite animal to engage with or to observe?
Well, it's definitely an ocean animal. I love whales. I love gray whales. I've painted them. I've visited them in the ocean on boats and stuff. But I mean, it's such a hard question. I love sea turtles. I love dolphins. But it's definitely, I do love birds and I love pelicans. But my most favorite animal in the world, if you were to ask me, I'm not wearing my whale necklace. I should be. It's definitely a whale. And I wonder what your favorite animal is.
Mine?
Yeah, what's yours? Your favorite fish, I should say, not animal. I mean, you would call it your creature.
Well, I guess it would be sharks. But I'm actually really fascinated by this one behind me, the oceanic white tip. And one of the reasons is because there are perhaps anywhere between 5% or less left in their original population globally since we started fishing them. Hammerhead sharks too. So one of the things, our big mission is to protect endangered sharks. And one of the reasons I came to Hawaii is because there's been some increased attention on, it was actually a lawsuit to hold the fisheries, the tuna fisheries accountable for killing these sharks as bycatch. These are also one of the most, used to be one of the most common in the shark fin trade and among the most coveted because of their large fins. So the poster child for me now is the oceanic white tip, and we're actually going out to photograph them and try to build up a database. And instead of tagging them, we collect them via underwater photography. And ideally, we'll be able to track these animals alive over time when they return from their migration. So that's, yeah, oceanic white tips are among some of the most charismatic and sometimes accused of being aggressive, but I've seen them, they're curious, but generally not that interested. Like many sharks, if you're in their element, you become more in their turf, and also you're less of an invader sitting at the surface looking like something else, like their food maybe. So fun answers and questions. I'm looking to see if we have any. We have a couple artists on too that I recognize that are watching. So this will be on Shark Stewards YouTube. We have 5 other artists on there, and 4, and now Stephanie Martin is our 5th. And I guess, you know, we're getting close to closing. Is there anything else you want to add, Stephanie? I mean, we know that we can find your art on Etsy, on your website, and hopefully soon open studios in Santa Cruz, which is really a lot of fun. And other galleries, Ansel Adams, which is a really remarkable gallery, and Carmel, other places. So if you are listening, I encourage you to support Stephanie and her work and her art, and buy a piece of art and tell her how great it is, because we really appreciate it. And someday we hope to meet in person and maybe have an art show, right, Pamela?
Yes, we have big plans. I'd like to have an art show. Well, we can have one in Santa Cruz. I've been wanting to do that. I have a couple places in mind and people that want to do it, but I'd also like to have an art show in Hawaii. And that's something we've talked about, that after hopefully COVID isn't going to slow everything down too much, but I'd like to have one arranged in Hawaii. And for those of you who can't make it, I'd like to do a Zoom and a live stream of the event, because it'll be exciting. And I would like to announce who our next artist will be. It's actually not an artist, but you mentioned the young artist Lorenzo. He's a kid who loves to draw sharks, and his favorite animal in the world, or fish in the world, is the great white shark. I'm going to invite a 1st grade school teacher, Miss Whiteman, to be our guest, and she's going to talk about the kids in her class and all the drawings of sharks inspired by David's book. His book, if you want to put a picture of your book up, Sharks for Kids. She's going to talk a little bit about her students in her class and some of the artwork that they've done, because every child in her classroom has received a copy of the book, and they became so excited and inspired. So our next artist is sort of not really an artist, but she's a teacher of many artists, maybe 15. I think she's got 15 to 16 students. So she's going to represent 16 artists, 15 to 16 artists. And we'll have her on, and she'll talk about what it's like to teach kids art. And she's going to talk about what these kids say. The kids can't be on the program, but she can. But that'll be exciting. And then after Mrs. Whiteman, we will have another artist to be announced later.
That's great. You know, I was invited to speak to his class. There's the cover, and there's one of Kevin's works there in the middle. But that's great that we're gonna connect with her, the kids, and it's really fun. And we're gonna be posting a lot of these young artists' contributions. We're calling it International Shark Awareness Month. It coincides with Shark Fest and Shark Week, but we're going to make it a Shark Conservation and Participation Month. So looking forward to that with Ms. Whiteman and some of her classes works in about a month, right, Pamela? Whenever you want to do it.
Anytime. Stay tuned, everybody. It'll be in about a month. I say we do it in July. This is July 1st. We tried to make the June date with Stephanie, and it just got crazy. And so here we are, July 1st. We'll probably do the next show by the end of this month. We'll let you know. We'll give you some forewarnings on our Instagram sites this time around.
Well, I want to give a shout out to this woman here, Nancy, who is, we call her Tiki, who has a passion for Hawaii and is a big part of our team and leads our beach cleanups in San Francisco, including one July 4th weekend. And also she's going to be hosting a Sharks and Mermaid Parade on the Embarcadero, and I want to combine it with a swim. So I'll be there in a shark suit. She'll be there in a mermaid suit. We have a video of her and her husband. I'm not sure what kind of dancing it was, but more ballroom dancing on the beach. And so she's a big contributor. And she said her favorite animal is a puhi, which is the local moray eel. So if you go to our YouTube channel, I actually made a video about 30 feet from where I'm sitting right now in the tide pools of these amazing fish. They are fish, they're not eels. The moray eels, which have an incredible amount of diversity here in Hawaii and have a lot of songs and lore around them. And so that's Nancy's favorite animal. We'll show the video. We'll post it on our channel at YouTube. So we're also going to be doing some other live casts here from Kona, including looking at tiger sharks. Also, these are sea turtles here on the right. There is a healthy colony of green sea turtles that have recovered since they're protected. They still are the Endangered Species Act, but they're just magnificent and gentle animals. And with Bruce Watkins here, who is a scientist who lives here in Kona, and we hope to be doing an event on International Shark Day, July 14th in Kona, to not only support recent legislation that bans the fishing and especially tournament fishing of sharks here in Hawaii. We're trying to do the same thing with Shark Watch in California. That's current work that we're doing actually the research for, but also to support these oceanic whitetips and these international protection for sharks that visit Hawaii, but then go out there and head west and end up in these gill nets or longline nets. So please go to our events page, join us. There are many virtual events, including with the California Academy of Sciences that I'm associated with. Cal Academy has a new shark exhibit. We always have a Sharktoberfest in the fall, October 7th, nightlife this year. And then we're gonna do a breakfast club with about 4 or 5 of our team that week, the week of the 12th, I think it is. I'll be on the 15th, Dr. Roca will be on the 14th, Bianca Bama, one of our science team, will be on. So if you wanna learn about sharks, follow the Cal Academy as well. And Nancy just corrected me. The beach cleanup is on the 11th, and George and she were swing dancing, stupid. So it shows what I know. She didn't say that. I added that. So again, thank you, Stephanie, so much. I really learned a lot. I really enjoyed it. And Pamela for setting up the Art for Sharks. We will put this on YouTube. Thanks especially to our viewers. I'll share the video with you, Stephanie. You can do whatever you would like with it. Put it on your page. Share with your students, or all the people who have to watch your stuff. My mom has to see everything of mine. No choice, right? So again, I want to thank everybody. I'm David McGuire, director and founder of Shark Stewards, and hopefully see you healthy and in the flesh. Get vaccinated. Keep our ocean clean and healthy. Save a shark. Let's celebrate the ocean together. So
thank you.
Again.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Aloha.
Cheers. Thank you. Aloha.